Yeah, I think in this day and age, as we see technology continue to grow in leaps and bounds in terms of its capacity and capabilities, and humans are the ones that ultimately design those machines and often are feeding those machines data to make decisions uh, on behalf of humans. We must be aware of our inherent biases in how we design those machines and how we feed that data in.
Hello and welcome to Digital Mindfulness. I'm your host, Lawrence Ampofo. Today we're here with the CEO and founder of Sift Science, Jason Tan. After successfully completing the famous Y Combinator program, Jason and his team use machine learning to prevent online fraud. You should listen to this episode if you want to understand the potential for algorithms to influence our lives, what makes a mindful machine, and why it will take time for technology to truly counter fake news. But first of all, welcome to the show. For over 3 years now, we've brought you the best teachers and thought leaders to teach you how to be your best self in a digitally distracted age. If you're new to the show, then the best place to find out much more about us is to visit digitalmindfulness.net/start. Here you'll find a collection of some required listening podcasts where we discuss everything from becoming more focused to habit building, cyberbullying, and much, much more. Okay, enjoy the show with Jason Tan. So, Jason, thanks so much for being on Digital Mindfulness. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lawrence. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm wondering if you can give the audience a little bit of an introduction to yourself and particularly how you came to found Sift Science.
Sure. So my background, I graduated from the University of Washington in Seattle, Washington, in 2006 with a computer science degree. And after that, I worked as a software engineer at a bunch of different tech startups in Seattle. Most notable was Zillow.com, which is a housing website, and that's now publicly traded. And 5 years into that career, I had this realization that I would like to start my own company. And for me, the motivation for starting a company is actually quite personal in that I developed a philosophy over my career that life is short, and who you spend time with at the office, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, is a meaningful decision that should not be taken lightly. And I wanted to spend time with people that I could enjoy seeing and learning from and being challenged by and solving tough problems with. And so there's no better way to kind of have some say in who you work with than to start your own company. And so in 2011, moved down to San Francisco and went through the startup accelerator called Y Combinator, which has produced the likes of Dropbox, Airbnb, Stripe, and some other great businesses. And off we went to the races.
Fantastic. And just as a very quick aside, how are you finding that now in terms of, working for yourself and it giving you meaning?
It's fantastic. I like to joke that I haven't worked a day for the last 5.5 years since the company was started. I think it truly, there's truism to that saying that when you find purpose and meaning in your work, it doesn't feel like work. And for me, that has felt truer than ever. I wake up with excitement and energy to go to the office, even when it's tough. To be clear, startups are very difficult. There are definitely some days that are more challenging than others, but I think when you feel like the why of your career and your job is grounded and sound for you, it makes all the difference. And so I've been very lucky to work with some people that just humble me every day with their intelligence and their passion and their curiosity. And that's something that as we grow from roughly 90 people and beyond, we hope to maintain in our culture.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about Sift Science. What is it that you're actually focused on there?
Yeah, so we use machine learning, which is a subset of artificial intelligence, and we use machine learning to help businesses online detect and prevent bad behavior from happening. And so when I say bad behavior, what I mean is people using stolen credit cards, creating fake accounts, posting spammy content, stealing other people's passwords, whatnot. How do you create a internet that is full of trust and instead of people having to hesitate about whether they can trust someone, we want to take care of all of that decisioning and enable these businesses and end users to really have a great experience online.
That's interesting. You talk about trust because I mean trust is very much a human trait, isn't it? And I wonder. Well, we're going to get into this whole discussion of trust because I mean you wrote this great article called "Mindful Machines," and just for people that haven't read this and don't really understand what that means, what in your perspective is a mindful machine and why are they so important?
Yeah, I think in this day and age, as we see technology continue to grow in leaps and bounds in terms of its capacity and capabilities, and humans are the ones that ultimately design those machines and often are feeding those machines data to make decisions uh, on behalf of humans. We must be aware of our inherent biases in how we design those machines and how we feed that data in. And there's been some pretty comical examples in the last 5 years of especially artificial intelligence systems gone wrong, and people are able to troll or reprogram that artificial intelligence in ways that were not intended by the original designers, but still the door was left open to be taken advantage of, and so it's something that I think is only going to continue to happen more and more frequently. And the digital era is a double-edged sword. It really enables incredible benefits, but in the wrong hands, it can also wreak havoc.
You mentioned there that there were some examples of AI gone wrong, and especially like there were some kind of really strong examples there of when kind of those biases of not being in human interest, as it were. But could you share some of those examples with us?
Yeah, the article was Tay, which was basically an AI social media bot designed by Microsoft, and people had learned how to trick it into, uh, uh, I guess, developing an affinity for racist content, and obviously, no harm, no foul in the grand scheme of things, but you can imagine that, and then they shut it down before it became too much of a wild train ride. But in terms of just being an example of how that was definitely not the intent of Microsoft to design a racist chatbot, but it still turned out to be taken advantage of. And so, how do you design machines that can carry the same intent as its creators, and assuming that intent is good? And then even more so, you just see this, in today's age, especially here in America, the saga of fake news, and that has been top of mind for many of the population. And how do you, create literacy both amongst humans and machines to weed out what is, real, what isn't.
I mean, that's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? Like, kind of teaching machines media literacy or digital literacy, as it were. But I'm wondering, Jason, do you think that these examples show that people are almost inherently bad, as it were? That when there's a system that will automatically try to game it to for negative effects?
I am a hopeless and eternal optimist. It's hard to be an entrepreneur without those qualities. So I would argue that most people are inherently good. And I think some small percentage of the population goes off the tracks once in a while. And I think that that's how we've always been, and it's something that we just have to be mindful of as we build more and more systems and technology. There's this funny thing in our world of science where, especially with anything kind of security focused, there's many ways for an attacker or a hacker to get into your system, and you as a defender need to find and plug all the holes into your system. And so, it's unfortunate because it's kind of asymmetrical in that nature that the attacker, has so much power in some ways, and you need to kind of be on your guard in many different ways. And so, this is just the nature of the game. And I think that as more and more technology advances and it gets into the hands of everyone in the world, we just have to be aware that there is this power that comes with that technology.
So, with that in mind, then, in terms of being defenders and being, guardians, as it were, of our digital experiences, how then do you think we can make machines more mindful, or rather, what is a mindful machine from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is where thinking carefully about how you design your system to be resilient against uh, unintended behaviors. And this is actually a pretty common and a well-established software engineering principle already, which is, you have to design for these edge cases or use cases that are not originally intended for the system. And how do you, I think the challenge with designing for edge cases in this context that we're talking about is that the edge cases are forced upon by very intelligent humans that are trying to proactively break your system. And so it's an interesting kind of arms race to design your system in a way that can outsmart a human. Now, I think this is where a lot of the advances in machine learning, which is the technology that we specialize in, are really exciting because they are continuing to get smarter and smarter. And so the arms race is starting to catch up. But you still need to incorporate that mindfulness into the software design process from the beginning, and make sure that you anticipate how could this system be taken advantage of, and what do we want to do in those situations.
It's really interesting that you link the term mindfulness in this perspective to resilience, and it's interesting because I think when kind of referring to human beings, mindfulness is really kind of related to things like stress reduction or calm, greater calm, but kind of I guess that's all under the rubric of something like resilience, right? Making humans more resilient to all of these different challenges that come our way, and it's really interesting that you can apply that same thinking to machines and algorithms to make the internet, as you say, more trustworthy.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that machines and algorithms don't have any stress. They don't need food. They don't need water. So those concepts I don't think apply, in my opinion, apply as much. But machines are prone to error. That is very much proven. And how do you just like in the real world of the human, you want to stay centered in the chaos of it all. You want to keep your head level in the chaos, and no matter what outside forces are trying to interfere or make an impression upon you, machines must do the same and stay true to their meaning.
That's really cool. And then I guess, like as you were saying again before, that staying true and staying centered in the kind of machine world, it's a constantly shifting process, isn't it? Like the
Yes, and I think this is where having very careful thought. I mean, I ironically, like, being mindful about the design is how you have the system itself become mindful.
awesome. So it's interesting. I wrote an article about this years ago, called "Mindfulness in the Machine," and this was actually something, and I kind of would like you to kind of elaborate a little bit more on this. But this was something that I kind of hypothesized a few years ago. But do you believe then that mindfulness almost is a human trait, and it can be designed into our machines?
I don't know if mindfulness is a trait so much as it is a behavior. And if I think about that in terms of behavior, then you can definitely uh, program behavior. That is what machines do very well, is to be algorithmic in their behavior and very predictable in their behavior. So I think that uh, that's where mindfulness as a behavior, it's something that is a lifelong journey, and I think that same thing with machines. The building blocks and the core components of machines are going to continue to evolve and change, and how we put those building blocks together are going to change, and so it that too is a lifelong journey.
Many people are concerned about machines actually replacing people, especially given the fake news scandal. And also that machines and algorithms are vulnerable to manipulation, so much so that the same item of content or the same news piece can be presented two different ways. One's true and one's not true, and the machine even can't tell the difference, much less the person consuming that content. And I'm just wondering, if because machine learning is being it's being given so increasing responsibility for our digital experiences, is this actually a big problem, or can you see actually that the humans will have to get better at identifying what's true and what's not, or do you think machines will get there before?
I think it's going to take both to really solve this problem. And it goes back to that term of media literacy, and how do you, as a human, ask basic questions when presented with information to arrive at your own conclusion as to whether that information is real or not, or trustworthy or not. And then how do you teach computers to also make those assessments on their own? And so I think that in terms of the technology itself, it's going to take a while for that technology to be truly, stands on its own. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to news. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to language and words. And even though the specific branch of artificial intelligence, natural language processing, has come a long way in the last few decades, it is still nowhere near what humans can perform in terms of understanding the nuances of language. And when presented with the same facts, the surrounding context around those facts can be written drastically different, right? I mean, in America, we have the Fox News, which is very right wing, and we have CNN or something else that's very left wing, and they are often putting their own spin on the same facts. And so, where do you define the word fake and not fake, right? That is a very subtle and nuanced answer. And so, teaching computers to understand those nuances the way humans can is quite the challenge. But I do think there will continue to be advances in that technology, and it's going to lead to a beautifully harmonious hybrid system of humans and technology working together.
One of the things in your article that you wrote about that jumped out at me was you made almost a call to arms that companies need to adopt a culture of mindfulness with regards to product development. And I was wondering, do you think, Jason, that companies are becoming more open to adopting that culture, given what you've just spoken about?
I think some companies are, some companies aren't. I think that oftentimes there is an unnecessary pressure to grow at all costs, especially in Silicon Valley, where I'm from, or where we are headquartered. I see a lot of entrepreneurs succumb to their own fears or the pressure from the board or whatever it is to keep growing and live up to those high expectations, whether they are self-inflicted or not. And I think that it's important in those moments more than ever to remember that we are building our companies for the long term, and that small decisions we make today can lead to huge consequences down the road. That's often how companies you know are built, is just small decisions one on top of another that compound. And so I would advise that those companies remember that the big picture of why they're doing what they're doing. And I'd like to think that our culture is pretty intentional about the way we do things, and that tends to start at the top with myself, and culture kind of is championed from the leadership. And so that's something that we try to take to heart every day.
So, Jason, in this age where our world is so connected digitally, what would you say are the most important human traits? And also, how do we cultivate those?
That's a great question. I think as we become more connected, I worry that we lose our sense of reality and we lose our sense of self, because we become part of this hive mind, especially in a culture with Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat. There's a bit of this look at me type of mentality that's happening, and I think it's warping people's sense of self. And I think it's important to remember that you are your own person and you have your own life, and the your self-worth and your happiness should not be measured by what you see going on in other people's lives. You should stay true to your path, and you know celebrate in other people's happiness too, but don't depend on it for your own joy and entertainment. And I think that, I guess, to answer your question, what is the most important human trait? It's this ability to connect while still being our own person. And I think we can come together in tribes, but we each bring something to the table. And I don't want to see us lose that uniqueness that we bring to the table. And I mean, it's a bit worrisome to see some of these youth, teenagers and whatnot, who have incredible fame early on in their life, and they, flame out after a short period of stardom. How will they continue on with their life? They will associate their sense of self with all that following and all that attention. And I think it can lead to disastrous consequences. And so, I personally believe that the digital era, this hyperconnectivity, is powerful and incredibly beneficial, but it does not come without its negative consequences. And we have to be mindful of what those are.
Do you think then, Jason, that as part of a media literacy program, that we almost have to teach people about sense of self in relation, when you can see everybody else at an instant?
Yeah, I think so. There's one of these TV shows that I love. It's called Portlandia, and there's a very funny line, but also sadly true line, which is that one of the main characters goes on this trip and posts all these photos to Facebook. At the end of this short act, he says, "On Facebook, everyone crops out all of the sadness." And I think it's so true that we as your lives become more and more public, you feel this pressure to only show the best parts of your life because all your friends and family are watching, and it leads to this weird dichotomy of one version of your life that is online and isn't quite the complete picture, and then another version that is more alone than ever, and disconnected, and that's the part that needs the most help and human connection. And so I think part of this media literacy is remembering that there's a real world in which you should be hanging out with your friends and venting and letting off steam and getting help for your problems.
Jason, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. Where can people find out more about you and SIF Science and connect with you?
Yeah, I am on Twitter. My handle is just my name, Jason Tan, and our website is sifscience.com. So love to follow up with anyone that's interested.
Brilliant, Jason. Well, look, thanks so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us.
Thank you, Lawrence. Talk soon.